Great. Okay, everyone, welcome to today's roundtable discussions on books and climate change. With me today are two guests. One is from Basque Country, the other one is from Slovenia, and together we'll talk about the role of books in reading and reading in raising awareness, learning, and even inspiring action when it comes to environment and climate change. Our conversation today will explore what environmental scientists do, what editors do, how books address environmental issues, the impact of stories, and most importantly, what we can also do to combat, to make a change. Before the start of this conversation, I want to very briefly present my guest today. So Dr. Aioro Zabalo is a scientist and a lecturer at the University of Cambridge in the Department of Land Economy and the director of the Master's Program in Climate, Environmental and Urban Policy. She also works at the Cambridge Center for the Environment, Energy and Natural Resources, and is a member of the editorial board of the Ecological Economics Journal, and also worked as an editor for the journal Nature Sustainability. And she's also a writer. Have I forgotten anything?
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Katarina.
Thank you so much for being with us today. The other guest is Majo Jug Hartman, the founder and editor-in-chief of Hart Publishing, a publishing house which focuses on educational publishing, picture books, fiction for children, young adults and adults, and the publishing house develops educational collections, didactic materials, and textbooks for various professional fields. Have I forgotten anything, Maya?
I think it's very good, George. Thank you.
Great. Thank you also very much for being with us today. And my name is Katarina, and as a representative of Malin's publishing house, I will be moderating this conversation. So let's start. My first question for you, Aiora, is why did you decide to become an environmental scientist, and what do you do every day? How does your job look like?
Thank you, Katarina. So I remember that decision quite clearly. It happened when I was a teenager, and I was already very interested in the environment, also in science, and I really did want to make a difference through my work. So there was this degree at the university called Environmental Sciences, and as soon as I learned about it, I decided I want to go for that. About my everyday tasks, lately, the main thing I do is I teach, so prepare teaching classes, slides, and so on. When I had more free time and I wasn't teaching so much, what I would do is mainly speak with people, and that's because even though I started as an environmental scientist, I moved gradually to being a social environmental scientist, and that means talking with people about what they think about the environment, what they can do about the environment, and how they can combine their livelihoods with making something for nature.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. What is your favorite part of your job? What would you say you're most excited about?
Yeah, so it's this interaction. At the time when I used to do fieldwork to investigate some specific projects, which I investigated in Mexico, for example, I used to love speaking with people who were like working on their maize plots, on their farmlands, and listening to what the stories they had to tell me. Nowadays, that has translated to also interacting with the students, and it's really enriching to discuss with students how they see the theory that I explained to them, how they see whether this can be applied to practice, and also to listen to the examples they have to bring. So that's, to me, that's the most exciting part, talking with people about environment and human relations.
How wonderful. Maya, for you, I have the same question. You are an editor. Can you tell us a little bit, what does it mean? What do you do every day? And what do you like about being an editor the most?
Thank you for asking this. Yes, it's a very multitasking job, actually, because from the ideas that occur in our head to the war stock where the books finally reach the destination, market, and everything. So the excitement of this job is to find a good idea for the proper title that you would like to publish, and to reach the goal that the book will be hopefully successful. This is the excitement of this, and there is the sentence for the publisher that we say, why don't we publish only bestsellers? Because this is the question for $1 million. But not just this. I think the juicy thing is to end up with a very good group of co-workers, because the editor himself or herself couldn't do anything if he or she couldn't find very good authors, very good editors, co-editors, and other people who help to finish the book to be published at the end. And this is quite sometimes challenging, because we do originals and we do translated works. Translated works they're not easier, because even if you know approximately how the book will look at the final part, there is a challenge, because you can't say that the book is for children. For example, we do mostly for the children for educational purposes, that there are simple books. All books are very complicated, and it's very important to engage a very proper translator or expert who will help to present the facts properly. It's very important for the children. So this is the first stage to how to find very good authors, and I'm really glad that we work with the, let's say, esteemed scientists or translator that help us with this. Also originals, these are more complicated, because from idea to the final book, it's quite a long way. It could also last a year or two or more years to finalizing the book. So the editor is like, let's say, the master of the music. Everything should be in one hand to organize the book that it's successful at the end. So hard to say, because our work is usually invisible. Nobody really knows what is behind every sentence, every point that is inside. Also the illustrations, the pictures, photos, everything should stay on the proper site. Okay.
Yeah. So you are kind of like a director of an orchestra, trying to put all the little pieces together.
Yeah. This is kind of a comparison of what editor do.
That's a wonderful analogy. Yeah, and you, Aioro, you are also a writer, so you also wrote a book. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? What kind of book? What made you decide to write a book?
Writing the book started with textbooks. I'm actually my first jobs were as the editor of textbooks, handbooks, let's say for different parts of educational system. And I was asked to prepare such as textbooks for the secondary school. So that's how actually this story started. Writing the textbooks, then edit them, then organizing the other things. So yeah, this was the first thing. And I also translated some subjects that are familiar to me. So I must say I'm quite engaged in the science and the technology educational books and textbooks from the past till now.
And yeah, the same question for you, Aioro.
Thank you, Katarina. So yes, I did write a book which is in Basque language. The title is in Our Hands, or Nature in Our Hands. And I also had an editor. In fact, I had 2 editors. They were fantastic. And I promise you that the work they do and how they improve the final piece is incredible. So yeah, a big thank to my editors here. So the book, Nature in Our Hands, this is a book that connects the environment with decisions we make every day. For example, whether to buy this food or this other food, what can be better for the environment and what might be better for us, or perhaps what is more important? Is it the forest, or is it to build more houses? These are complex decisions. Normally there is no easy answer, and what I did in the book is I combined social science on environmental decisions that we tend to discuss in academic environments with people and situations and spaces that I have experienced throughout my life and my travels. So let's say I talk about a farmer that I found hiking in Guatemala, or I talk about things that I would do when I was a very young child that have inspired these questions about how we relate to the environment. The book is useful for daily conversations and daily decisions about climate and nature, and about what we can do about the planet. And with daily conversations, I mean conversations we would have in the classroom or even in our kitchen at home. And I try to make it different from other nature-related books, because a lot of this kind of literature tends to be quite one of 2 types. It can be a bit pessimistic, a bit tough, because of all the change that we are witnessing and so on. So it can be a bit like, I guess, gloomy in a way. And then the other type of books around nature tend to be guidelines or instructions, which are quite prescriptive about what we can do, how to have our own vegetable garden, how to do in our household to be greener, and so on. And because these decisions are so many, they are on almost everything we do every day, what I wanted to provide in the book is something more of a framework to help people think about these decisions that they encounter every day, and help them think more independently, rather than saying this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. No, it's rather helping people to think a bit more about that. And that's the idea. The more we think about our relation to the environment, the more we can do, even if we might not do our actions perfectly for nature, but just thinking about that helps us. So that's what the book is about. And the reason why I wrote it is because I started collaborating with radio and newspapers and trying to convey this science that we discuss at the university, trying to convey that to a broader public, to people like my family who were very interested in the work I do and so on. And I realized that nowadays there is a lot of interest on these topics, and it is a really good moment for us scientists to try to communicate all this that we have been discussing in academia for many years now. And so yeah, I thought it was the right moment, and through collaborations with the media, I had this content already, this kind of idea, which I shaped into the book.
That's wonderful to hear, because I think that also sometimes we are a little bit scared. We can be a little bit scared of scientific books. Sometimes when we want to learn about a certain topic, we think, oh, maybe we don't have enough knowledge about it to read books that are specifically on that knowledge. And I think that that's why it's very important to really address the topic in the right way. And so my next question is for you, Maya. How do you, as you work with many scientists and you publish many books about science, how do you make sure that everyone can understand them? And especially with children's books, how can you make sure that the children can get the ideas from the books that you publish?
It's a very important question. Thank you for this, Katarina. You know, sometimes science was, like you said, something that we should be afraid of because we don't understand and we need some knowledge that we can explain children how to read these books. So it's easier not to take this book and stick to the, let's say, easier topics that we are more comfortable with. But it's very, very important. And nowadays, I think also this attitude towards the book of scientific topics changed a lot. And I'm really glad, because it took decades to be like this. And I can see that there are more the number of these books are increasing. But as you said, it's very important how to use this. It doesn't, the children's book should be understandable to everyone, especially for younger children. And sometimes for the authors with higher knowledge and with, let's say, with the level which is understandable scientific, it's very hard to put them down to this niveau for the younger children. It's the authors that could do this are not so many. I used to work with late Dr. Alexandra Kornhauser. I was just thinking about her, how we met and everything. She was very, very lucid, and she knew how important it is to engage very young children, to motivate them for the science, and to make them understand how the world works. That there are crucial topics that they will decide when they're grown up and everything. So she also declared that the interest for the science, if it's not, let's say, engaged in very young age, it stops. It's important that the children are connected. They come to with these topics together before they are of age of 7. Let's say this is kind of her. But she also wrote for very young children, for kindergarten, for example, the children who don't know to read, just pictures, etc. And so her spirit and the idea, they are very alive in our publishing house today, with the other very renowned scientists who write different topics, and we are very proud to be, let's say, recognizable by this. For example, we have this identificational keys, biological identificational keys, the series of 15 different topics for very young, and for that, let's say, they can use it at the end of the primary school, and they are still used in the schools. It's wonderful how, let's say, the book is not just for a year or two, but can stay for decades with this topic, which is quite important, I think. Very simple, but still understandable to all, and not appear for the parents and teachers that they could explain this, because it's already explained, and it's motivating and keep the interest, let's say, for the future job, for the children. Then they will decide important things in their life, perhaps. Just away from your question, but yeah.
Yeah, so those books that you've mentioned, they stayed with even you could say that they stay with generations of readers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do. We keep also these titles alive. We renew them sometimes, like change a bit the concepts and layouts to be more up to date to the future knowledge, or but yes, this is the idea. that we put our efforts to books that will stay like encyclopedia, identificational keys, also some translations about viruses, about and environment things. Every topic is very important. Last time we do some paleontology, geological topics, biologic, everything. So what is, for example, the idea that should be more explained to the children or even young adults.
Yeah, for sure. Now, okay, you've mentioned books that stay with us through generations, but also I was wondering, because nowadays there are more books that are specifically talking about environment and climate change and things like that. And I want to ask first you, Aiora, when you were a child, did you read books that were talking about these issues that you were interested in? And can you say whether they were talking about them in a different way than today? Yeah, maybe if you can talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. So we're talking about the 80s and the 90s, and from like leisure books, I don't remember there being like any or many books about climate change. That was not a big issue at the time. Like it was not a big issue in the public imaginary. So the first sources where I really digged deep into nature topics were actually encyclopedias, and I remember a very specific encyclopedia in my city's library, which was about environmental topics. It had a chapter on pollution, a chapter on nuclear energy, and so on, and it was quite nicely published. It had nice, beautiful pictures. The description was quite easy to understand for early teenager as I was at the time. So I remember that leaving a very strong imprint on me. And then in terms of like more reading books, not so much the references I would use for class assignments, there were books obviously that were talking about nature and human relations, and through those books, even though they were not explicit about problems about climate change, they did convey a sort of values about how we relate to nature. So yeah, that definitely was there from very early on, but the literature was very different in terms of how they portray climate change as we see nowadays.
Yeah, and the same question for you, Maya. What about what kind of books did you read when you were an aspiring editor, scientist?
I must admit, when you put this question, that I don't really remember. But I remember one thing, because I have been editor for 30 years, that when we started with this environmental topics, they were not very popular. I mean, we felt the need that we publish them to explain, but this was kind of a hidden environmental risk. Nobody was so aware, or they would like to put it behind, something that you don't want to see. There's nothing to be read about. I must admit this was not very popular, but not nowadays, because everyone talks about the climate change, the things that we can do, that we need to start to raise the children with this awarenesses of the environmental pollution, and so these nowadays books, they become more urgent, more fatalistic, more need to do something with the environment before it's too late. Also, the new issues about what's happening around the world with specific environmental things that happen every day. So the people must see now what is it. The important thing is how to introduce this, and that somebody can do at least a very small thing in the young age, and it helps So just not to put it behind and say, it's not for me, I don't understand it. It's not happening around me. But yes, it happens right now. And therefore these books are more popular. They are not popular, but more, we need them more than perhaps decades ago. Even when I was a child, I don't remember a single environmental book, maybe as a story, okay, but not something that be more educational or something that forces us to do something. We're not like this as a children, but now in this, it's there are inevitable changes. We need to be aware and first to know what is behind and what could be in our future, and therefore the environmental books for the children are very important.
Yeah, definitely. I agree that there are more books available today that also tell us what to do, more instructional in a way as well. So maybe a similar question that we have already talked about this, but so Aiora, your book, your book, Aiora, was who was it intended for? Who is the ideal reader? And also, maybe if you can share your point of view as a scientist, as an author, what are some ways that you can make science and scientific discoveries more accessible through writing, so that everyone can understand them?
Yeah, thank you. So my book, it is intended to, when I was writing it, I was thinking primarily of people close to me, so my childhood friends, my family, but also my own self when I was a teenager. And I was diving into the world, trying to learn about it and seeing that the situation with the environment is quite dire. And I wanted to convey a message to the reader that we can indeed do something about nature. So as Maya has said, when talking about climate change and other environmental changes, it's often the case that we feel overwhelmed, or we have a range of negative emotions such as fear or sadness, and that can be quite freezing. It can block us and it can hinder any action. So the idea I wanted to convey is that yes, we can do something about nature, and that's why the title is that nature is in our hands. And so I provide some examples of how small actions have become widespread. So people cycling in the early 2000s now have become very widespread. Everyone is cycling in some cities. Or what is also the process whereby good practices get expanded. And so the idea is not to provide a naive tale about the fact that we can do something, because we know it's a difficult task and there are lots of different powers that confront these actions. But if we stay blocked because we feel this fear, we feel overwhelmed, then we might not be able to do anything. So that's that is the main, what I wanted to convey in this book, and what I wanted, the sort of message I wanted to give to a wide range of readers. And then in terms of what scientists can do to convey these ideas, well, that's I guess something I did with the book, which is try to bring those theories and concepts that I was seeing as a scientific journal editor, and also at work, in the hallways, in conversations, in peer-reviewed papers which are a bit difficult to understand for many, very specialist jargon. So I'm trying to bring that very useful information into a language that is related to everyday decisions, everyday things, because all this science, which is kind of hidden behind very difficult language, is indeed very useful for things that we do every day. And I think that's something that a lot of scientists are very aware of, that we need to communicate our science much more clearly, and we need to relate this science to everyday actions. But it is also difficult to do. So, but this is this would be the way.
Yeah, thank you. And Maya, would you agree? Would you say that scientists are more, as an editor, would you say that scientists are more aware of how difficult sometimes it can be to express certain ideas? Would you, what is your view as an editor? What are some ways that we can make science not only more accessible, but perhaps for younger readers also more interesting? What's your experience with that as an editor?
The important thing is also not just publishing the book, but introduce it, how to use it. So our goal is usually, because nature sciences are how the things work, and let's say what can we do outside. So when we release a book, we also organize some promotions with the children, and the children very enjoy those, which teachers and adults, I must say, when they're surrounded with the nature, let's say, the topics that we are presenting, and they do something by themselves, also technical things. So they're very interesting. They like to do it. This motivation increases when they are doing by themselves something, and they are also more aware of surrounding, not just reading a book or let's say watching the movies or some documentary, but to be involved in person. It's very important. So this also the authors as a scientist, they can help, because the children are very excited when they meet author in person with a flesh and blood, and how they can explain the things to them. They can touch, they can feel, they can smell. It's very important experience. So the books are not just the paper with the pictures, but could be also some influence or some ideas what to do when you're outside. So I think this is the idea. How can scientists also approach the nature to the younger children or adults as well?
Yeah, especially through, I think, through presentations and meeting the authors, also they get the chance to talk and ask questions which maybe they remain unanswered when they are reading a book. So yeah, I agree. That can be a very interesting, that can be a very good way to promote science and books and science. And now for our last question. It's a very simple question, but what can we do what can we do if we feel, because we talked about how sometimes books about environment can make us feel very overwhelmed and scared, but what can we do every day when we feel scared about the future of the planet or about the events that we see in the media and so on? What can we do? And Aioro, maybe if you can start with this question.
Thank you. Yes, and there is indeed research about this, about Earth pessimism, so to say, which I will try to synthesize in just 3 points. So the first thing would be to acknowledge these emotions and these feelings. They are there, but also see that there are examples of positive change. That is not just doom and gloom, but there are also really good examples of how us as a society have done really good things in terms of our relation with the environment. The second thing is to talk about this with other people so that we don't feel that we are alone in this. It is a community or a social concern. And the third thing would be do something about it. It could be a small action. It could be participate in a community initiative. It could be activism. It could be anything that is close to us and that we feel is easy for us to do, which can also make us feel empowered about the fact that we can indeed do something, and that can help us digest or transform those negative emotions into something that moves us.
Well, that's a very well structured answer. Thank you. And what about you, Maya? Do you also have some tips on how we can overcome this fear, these negative emotions?
I agree with Aioro that we need to do something. It's not just thinking and be scared of something that we really don't know if it's scared or not. But you know, the fear is then even bigger if you just put your thoughts inside your head. Even a small act is important to make you feel important and being part of something. I think, because being a publisher, that the knowledge is crucial. More we know, it's more we are aware that we can do or something good or not. There's no need to be afraid of, because we are armed with the knowledge how to react when something bad good might happen in the future, which is not necessary. But being prepared to have something in some knowledge. When you have knowledge, there's nothing to be afraid of, because you know how to react. The things that are sometimes wrong is perhaps the social media that put you, some negative energy and some unprofessional sides of something, which is for the younger children, also for adults, very harmful. Just remember Corona, how it was. People were totally devastated especially with the fake news. The fake news is something that is very, very harmful for youngsters and for adults as well. But the ground reason is that we believe fake news is not to have enough knowledge to decide which is really important and which is not, and which is good and which is false. And therefore, there are books. And if the younger children are accustomed, they are ready to read the books instead of believing some unfruitful stories, I think it's that we really have our profession to do something good in the future, or just right now.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way. That's a really good way to, I think, end this conversation as well. So it's important to first have the right knowledge, but then also to know what we can do and to feel that we can actually make a change, that we have things in our hands, if I may borrow this expression. Yeah. So and that's something that we can do both as authors, as publishers, and also as book readers as well.
Yeah, as book readers, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for participating in today's talk and sharing your insights as scientists, editors, and writers, and also for sharing these really useful ideas at the end. I really enjoyed learning about that. And I hope that this conversation can inspire our viewers as well to think about the future and climate change in a little bit more positive way, manageable way, if we want. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation too, Katarina.
Thank you for organizing and for inviting us, Katarina.
Yeah.
Thank you.